Okay, good people, here's part two. I said I would get back to that. You playing downsizing before upside. So I'm making that part two. What it actually means, most people enter an investment thinking, how high can this go? What's the potential? What if it doubles? Those are questions I ask myself as well. However, ownership thinking asks other questions as well. What if I'm wrong? How much could I lose? How much can I stand to lose? How much am I willing to lose? I said in the last video, keep your losses small, right? So that's what we mean by how much can I lose? How much can I afford to lose? How much am I comfortable with putting at risk if it goes the other way? How much of my capital is at risk? If this drops 20 to 30%, am I prepared? Meaning planning downside looks like this. You define risk before you chase reward. That's an edge. That's a real edge, in my opinion. Why this is so powerful. Markets do not punish optimism. They punish unpreparedness. Anyone can imagine upside, right? Few people calculate downside. The longer you are in this game, the better you can calculate downside. That's where discipline separates from emotion. I mentioned emotion earlier. How this shows up practically. Here's how it can show up. Position sizing. You don't bet the farm. You don't put all your money at risk in one position or all your money at risk in one risky play, right? You put a portion of profits that you've already made from someplace else at risk when you're uncertain, right? You decide how much of my portfolio am I willing to put in this position size, right? How much of this position deserves of what percentage of my portfolio does this position deserve? What percentage of my total capital am I willing to expose in this position, in this stock, in this company, right? Exit awareness. You don't just say, I'll sell it when it's up. You ask, at what point would I admit this is wrong? That's humility. That's risk control. Got to learn that, people. At some point in this game, you got to learn it. You ain't got to do it at the first onset of the game. You got to get in the game. You got to learn the game. You got to practice the game. I call it a game because I consider it the game of life. But what some folks say, you got to risk it to get the biscuit. You got to learn to put some money at risk, or you're never going to get ahead trying to make all the money that you can make on somebody's job. If you don't own the company, you're working for somebody. And that somebody has a team that's helping them grow their wealth. Every individual needs a strategy of how they're growing their wealth. And let me just tell you, the stock market, paper assets, is one of the greatest ways known to man to grow your wealth. Don't take my word. Go do the research for yourself, right? Emotional readiness. You ask yourself, if this drops tomorrow, will I panic? If the answer is yes, then the position is too large. You got too much money at risk. We've all done it at some point. That's something you learn. And when you get bit one time, when it bites you one time, you really start understanding and respecting position size. Okay, the real principle. Upside is uncertain. Downside can be defined. You can't control the market. Let me say that again. You can't control the market. I can't control the market. However, you and I can control our position sizes, right? We can control our exposure, and we can control our exit discipline. That's power. That's power in our portfolio. So, me personally, I don't enter a position hoping to be right, even though I've done all my research, right? I don't enter a position knowing how I respond. What I do is I try my best to enter a position knowing how I'll respond if I'm wrong, knowing how much I'm willing to lose in this position before it's time to exit this position. Because I can always get back in at a later date, right? Maybe at an even better entry than what I had initially got in. Anyway, food for thought. The compounding secret. Here's the quiet truth. Most people miss. You don't build wealth by massive wins. You build wealth by avoiding massive losses. Keep the losses small. Keaton Grace loved to hammer on that. Staying in the game. Time in the market beats trying to time the market. Let time compound for you. Let time grow your profits and your gains and your positions. Protection precedes multiplication. So faith is not reckless. It's confidence with wisdom, meaning you've done your research right. Planning downside isn't fear, it's stewardship. And we know here I'm always talking about stewardship. That keeps it all aligned. And we know align is my word for the year in 2026, alignment. Okay, good people. Hopefully I've broken that down and you can follow along. You guys walk in wisdom.